These are 9 books that made me an articulate speaker. I can guarantee you a lot of these books you either haven't heard of or you didn't know they could make you an articulate speaker. The first one is called The Coaching Habit. The reason I love this book so much is because it teaches you how to have a conversation in a way where you can persuade someone without needing to convince them. The whole premise of the book is, how do you ask smart questions? How do you make someone think about things and answer their own questions, solve their own problems? Because when you try to give someone a suggestion, they might decide, oh, well, this is your idea, I don't want to take this on. But when you start asking them questions and now they have to justify their beliefs, oftentimes they will convince themselves. They will say out loud what you want to say to them. And that's a lot more convincing than if you told them to do something. The book has tiny tips that are very, very useful in order to get information from the other person. The reason this makes you an articulate speaker is when you are talking to someone and they give you specific language, they use specific words, you can then use that language back to them. So if someone said, I crawl up into my shell every time I'm afraid, you can use that same phrase with them. Oh, when you were talking about crawling into your shell, I feel the same way. You're on the same frequency. So you can use their language with them and that way build a connection with them. A really powerful technique this book mentions is just 3 words. And those 3 words are, and what else? If you're talking to someone and you're getting them to open up about something, you can just say, okay, and what else is there? And oftentimes when they're at the end of the conversation, they will then come up with more things to say and more things to say. You will find people in therapy do a really good job of this. They just make you dig deeper and deeper, and all it takes is 3 questions. If you want to be a better conversationalist, if you want to be good at persuasion, I would highly recommend this book. Now, the second book does a really good job of summarizing all of the things that you need to have as an articulate speaker, and it breaks it down into chapters. The book is called 16 Undeniable Laws of Communication by John Maxwell. John Maxwell is a powerhouse in the leadership space. The man knows his stuff. And what I love about it is every chapter is broken down into specific tips that you can apply, and he gives proof of all of them. So for example, if I'm just to read the contents, it says the law of credibility. Your most effective message is the one you live. The law of observation. Good communicators learn from other good communicators. If you just read the table of contents, it would give you a really good idea of what to focus on to be an articulate speaker. Here are 2 things that I really like the book mentions. 1, when you speak, your conviction becomes contagious when your focus is on others and the benefits they will receive from your message. In other words, focus on how you benefit the other person from the words that come out of your mouth. A lot of times when we're speaking, we're thinking, how do I sound good? How do I look? How do I sound more confident? But if you can just shift your focus away to the other person and say, if I speak, how can this be a good use of their time? That way, your conviction is going to be a lot higher. And the second thing it says is, believe in the power of your words. Words have accomplished many monumental things in the history of our planet, and just by using your words very, very specifically, you can influence the behavior of a lot of people. Now, this next book is one of my favorites. When I started getting into the world of communication, I was really awkward. I would stand in the corner at events and I didn't really know what to do. And I remember someone coming up to me and saying, hey, why do you look so awkward? I remember thinking in that moment, I don't even have to say anything and people can tell that I'm awkward. How is that happening? That's when I picked up this book, What Everybody Is Saying. It's a phenomenal book on body language and how other people perceive you and how you can perceive other people simply based on how you look and how you behave. What I love about this book is that it gives specific examples of specific body language and gestures and what they entail. If you do this, what does that mean? Or if people do that, are they lying or telling the truth? It also busts a lot of myths like, does folding your arms always mean you're lying? Or if you're looking here, does that mean you're lying? You're looking there, you're telling the truth? The book is written by an ex-FBI agent, so he knows what he's talking about. Another thing I love about this book is that it's broken down in terms of each body part. So he talks about the head, the legs, the chest, the shoulders, so you know what to look for specifically in the body. If you want to learn to use your body, be more persuasive, be a more articulate speaker, I could not recommend this book more. On the topic of FBI agents, there's another book written by a different FBI agent. This book fundamentally changed my business when I read it. I remember I was getting on a lot of sales calls, and for some reason people just weren't buying my services. They just didn't feel I could help them, and I wanted to find out, what am I missing? There must be something in my script, there must be something in the way I'm addressing the conversation. And then I read Never Split the Difference by Chris Voss. This book is an absolute powerhouse. If you have a business where you have to convince people or persuade people, or you want to get your girlfriend to do things for you, you want your partner to go to restaurants that you want to, this is the book that you need to buy. I cannot tell you how many situations I've used this book in and I've gotten what I wanted. One of my favorite techniques in this book is when you are trying to get a deal from someone, instead of trying to negotiate by asking for a discount. So for example, if I went to buy a car and the price was $20,000, instead of saying, oh, $20,000 is really high, can you bring it down to $16,000? Can we do $17,000? Now it makes it uncomfortable for most parties. A technique this book recommends is just to compliment them on the price and just say, wow, this was amazing. So for example, you would go and say, $20,000, that's such an amazing price for this car. I wish I could buy it. My budget is $16,000, but this is such a fair price. So what you're doing in this situation is you're not telling them their price is not justified. You're complimenting them. But the way you present your budget is by saying, I would have bought it because it's such great value. Unfortunately, because of external circumstances, this is all I have. Now the other person has to decide, do I sell at their price? Or do I not sell at all? And most people, especially in sales, if they're trying to make a quota, if they're really trying to make a sale, they will oblige. They will sell you if they really want to make it. So the way you can approach conversations based on the tips in this book, absolutely amazing. Another big thing I like about this book is how it focuses on getting people to say no instead of yes. In persuasion, you hear a lot about people saying, get people to say yes, yes, yes. But this book says no, because no makes people feel like they have more control. So for example, do you want to go to that taco place? I'm not really sure. If they say yes, they feel like they're committing. But if I said, hey, would it be a terrible idea if we went to that taco place today? No, it's not a terrible idea. So because they've said no, the answer is yes, and it's easier to say no than it is to say yes in that situation. When you are able to articulate your requests in a way that they get the other person to agree with your way of thinking, your skills in conversation, in business, on stage will skyrocket. Could not recommend this book more. The next 5 books that I'm going to talk about have nothing to do with speaking directly, but there's so much that you can learn from them. Arguably, I would say just as much as the other books I just mentioned. This next book is called Letting Go. This was such an important book for me to read, and I'll tell you why. When we are learning a skill set like public speaking or social skills, we genuinely think we have some sort of a gap. I am here, I want to get to here. If I learn the skills, I will get here. And yes, there is truth to that. However, what if you already had the skill, but you just weren't able to access it when you needed it? So for example, if you are a great conversationalist, you're hilarious with your friends, you can talk to people who you're comfortable with, but the moment you are in an uncomfortable situation, you're talking to new people, you're on stage, all of a sudden you start getting anxiety and you can't be yourself. This book talks about exactly that. It talks about how do you remove the things that are preventing you from being yourself. It's not a case of what can I add, what technique can I learn, but how can I remove the blocks? How can I remove how my brain is always thinking of the worst case scenario, how my brain is always telling me I'm going to do a terrible job? How can I let go of these emotional traumas that I have so I can be myself, I can articulate myself the way that I want to? It also mentions the letting go technique that you can use every time you get a negative thought, and you can use this technique to just get over it and move on with your life. I think it's a phenomenal read. Everyone should pick it up because you don't need to acquire new skills sometimes. You already have it. You just need to let go of the baggage. This next one is going to sound very unusual, but I promise you, it completely changed the game for me when it comes to learning how to be a better, more articulate speaker. It's called The Inner Game of Tennis. I'm sure you're wondering, what the heck does tennis have to do with being an articulate speaker? what this book does such a good job of is explaining the two types of brain function. I know it's a book about tennis, but it talks about the brain a lot more. It talks about the two types of brains. The first one is the automatic brain. So if you were to tie your shoelaces or walk down the street, your brain is able to take your legs, your arms, your feet, your back, and combine them together, get them to move automatically. You don't individually need to tell your legs to move, your hands to move in a certain way, they just do, and that's what the automatic brain does. The job of the automatic brain is to take different parts of the body and put it together very, very quickly. The brain is very, very fast. Then the other type of brain it talks about is the conscious brain. This is used for analysis, this is used for brainstorming, this is used for practically asking yourself questions and engaging in dialogue. However, the problem is, a lot of times when we are speaking, when we're on stage, we are in our conscious brain. So we are looking at ourselves speak as we are speaking. And because we're so conscious, our brain is very slow. It's not able to do what it needs to do. So for example, if you were speaking and I told you, hey, make sure you're loud, make sure your pace is slow, use very good vocabulary when you're speaking, move your hands, now have a conversation with me. Because you're consciously thinking of 6 things at the same time, you just won't be able to articulate yourself at all. And this is what a lot of people do. Right before they step on stage, oh, I hope I get the notes right. I hope my boss likes me. I hope I remember what to say. Or when you're talking to a stranger at a party, oh, what do I say? I hope I say this. I hope I say this. We are in our conscious brain. But the book talks about how, in order to do your best, you must be in the automatic part of the brain. How do you get there? When you practice consciously in the conscious brain, but you do it over and over and over again, and then the conscious brain transfers that information onto the automatic brain. So a lot like the first time you learned to ride a bike, you didn't quite know how to do it. You were individually learning where to place your feet, where to go. But then over time, you just knew how to do it, and now you can just step on the bike and just ride. You don't have to think about it. That's an example of how a skill set goes from the conscious brain to the unconscious or subconscious brain. It is an absolutely brilliant book on how to learn any skill really fast, and it is crucial for articulate speaking. This next book has had such a huge effect on my life, I cannot even put it into words. It talks about how you can change your habits and your identity by changing who you believe yourself to be. The book is called Psycho-Cybernetics. It's a book about self-image and visualization. Let me give you an example. If you were to become an articulate speaker and I told you, hey, improve your vocabulary, use these words, employ these gestures in your body language when you speak, have these types of intonations, you're trying to work on all of these things individually. And that can be a very slow and conscious process. But if I asked you, who is your favorite public speaker? And you said, Simon Sinek is my favorite public speaker. And I said, okay, watch Simon Sinek speak and pretend that you're Simon Sinek for the next 1 minute. I just want you to replicate what Simon Sinek does. You will immediately be able to take what Simon Sinek does and replicate it. Why? Because you have taken on the identity of that person. The fastest way to change your habits and to change your identity is by developing a self-image that you want. That's what this book talks about. And it also talks about the power of imagination. The brain cannot tell what is actually happening and what we are visualizing. It talks about how we can pick a very unrealistic goal for ourselves and just set our mind to it. And forget about the how. We don't need to figure out the steps. So for example, if I told you your goal is to make $10 million in the next year, immediately your brain will say, well, I don't know how to do that. I can't set that goal. Let me set some other goal. That's not what you want to do. You want to set a goal that you think is impossible or really hard to reach. Now that you have that goal and you imagine what is it like every day when I have achieved this goal, not when I will achieve it, but I have already achieved it. So if you have $10 million, you're on vacation, you're on a beach, you're having fun, your team is taking care of everything, every day you will just close your eyes and you will visualize and you will imagine this. And what your brain will then do is they will automatically tell you all the things that you need to do to get to that destination. Because now I know if I want to make $10 million, is working a 9-to-5 going to get me there? No. Now I know what not to do. Is watching Netflix and eating potato chips all day, every day going to get me there? No. know, so I know what to do. So the longer you can focus on the goal, the more your mind will start to eliminate all of the options that don't get you to that end goal. Will just going to meetings and watching other people speak all day, every day help you? It won't. So if you set your mind to, I want to be a very articulate speaker, I want to talk like my favorite public speaker, my goal is to speak like this in the next year, and every single day you think about it, your mind will automatically say, these are the things you don't need to do, these are the things you need to do. Your mind will automatically start to look for the opportunities that line up with that goal. This book will help you not just to be an articulate speaker, but in life altogether. How can you become memorable when you speak? How can you make sure when you talk, people remember you long after you stop talking? The book Made to Stick talks about this. How do some ideas stick and others get forgotten? It talks about how so many conversations we have are very logical, very factual. Facts are very hard to remember. If I told you this book is orange and it has a gray sticker here and it's written by this person, you're not really going to relate to that a lot. But if I told you the key takeaways from the book and how I implemented them and how you can implement them, because it's a story, a metaphor, an analogy, it will stick in your brain much longer. It talks about how emotionally appealing to people is very, very important. You can't just be logical, you have to appeal to their feelings because we remember our feelings a lot longer. The book says for an idea to be very sticky, it must be simple, unexpected, concrete, credentialed, emotional story. And the acronym is SUCCESS. Another thing I love about this book is it mentions something called the information bias, where top-level executives will start using terms as if everyone else knows those terms because they use it every single day and they think everyone else also does. So the more intelligent you are, the more unrelatable you can be because you don't know everyone else doesn't know what you know. In order to be an articulate speaker, you must cater your language to the audience you're speaking to. Phenomenal book, highly recommended. The last book has nothing to do with speaking, but the way the author speaks and writes is absolutely incredible. Just to learn how to relay complicated information in the simplest way, I would recommend picking up any book by Alex Hormozi. This is $100 million leads. Why is this book so good? The book is a business book about how to get people to buy your stuff, how to get strangers to come and purchase your services and products. The thing I love about this is that it is so simple to understand. Look at all of these drawings. They are doodles. He talks about high-level business, how to make millions of dollars, and he explains all of those things with doodles. It makes reading fun and the language is kept very, very simple. Growing a multi-million-dollar business can be very, very complicated, but the way he uses language in its simplest form is amazing. Remember, being articulate is about being clear and concise so the other person can understand. It's not about using complicated vocabulary. What I also love about this book is he divides everything into sections. Here are 4 things you can do about this, 3 things you can do about that. If you just read this book and get an idea of how he explains these concepts, you can take the most complicated idea in the world and learn to simplify it. As a bonus, go watch his videos. He has a YouTube channel. The information he gives out is amazing. The way he speaks is out of this world. Everything about what Alex Hormozi does is unbelievable. Here are the 9 books that made me an articulate speaker. Now, if you want to learn the 37 mistakes to avoid if you want to be an articulate speaker, watch this video next.